Lock the door. No one can know she exists tonight. The whispered command echoed through the quiet halls of the Carter estate, and Evelyn Carter knew that the moment she had been waiting for her entire life was being taken away from her. Outside, the kingdom of Northern Moon was preparing for the most important night of the year, the mating ceremony where Lycan families gathered under the silver moonlight to discover the bonds that could change their futures forever. For every young Lycan, it was a night filled with hope, possibility, and destiny. But for Evelyn, it became the night she was meant to disappear. She stood inside a small room hidden away from the celebration, wearing the simple dress she had carefully prepared weeks before. Her hands rested quietly in front of her, as she listened to the distant sounds of music and voices beyond the walls. She was not angry. She was not even surprised. After years of living under her stepmother Victoria Carter's control, Evelyn had learned that being forgotten was something people expected from her. As an Omega, she had always been treated as less important than the powerful families around her. They valued strength, status, and influence. Evelyn possessed none of those things in the eyes of others. But what they never noticed was the way she cared for injured villagers, the way she comforted those who felt alone, and the way she continued choosing kindness even when kindness was rarely returned to her. Victoria entered the room with a calm expression, holding the key that kept Evelyn separated from the ceremony. "You should understand this is for the good of the family," Victoria said. Evelyn looked at her quietly. "For the good of the family," she repeated softly, as if trying to understand words she had heard many times before. Victoria believed Evelyn's absence would solve a problem. She believed the ceremony would pass without anyone asking where the forgotten Omega had gone. She believed destiny could be controlled if the right people were removed from the path. But Evelyn carried a truth Victoria did not understand. A person's worth could not be locked away. Far across the kingdom, inside the grand halls of Northern Moon Castle, Lycan King Adrian Blackwood prepared for the ceremony. The ruler of the kingdom was respected by thousands, but he carried a quiet disappointment that few people knew about. He had seen many powerful families use tradition for their own advantage. He had watched people chase status while forgetting compassion. Tonight, he hoped the ceremony would reveal something different. He hoped to find a connection built on truth rather than ambition. As the ceremony began, Adrian felt something unusual. Among the countless voices and gathered families, something was missing. Presence he could not explain. A bond that should have been there was absent. He looked toward the crowd, sensing that the night was not unfolding as it was meant to. Meanwhile, Evelyn sat alone behind the locked door, unaware that the most powerful Lycan in the kingdom had already sensed that someone important was missing. She believed the world had forgotten her. She believed her destiny had been taken away before she ever had a chance to choose. But beneath the same moonlight shining over the ceremony, two paths were quietly moving toward each other. And the girl they tried to hide was the one person the Lycan King had been searching for. The sounds of the mating ceremony continued throughout the kingdom, but behind the locked door of the Carter estate, Evelyn remained completely unaware of the changes happening beyond those walls. She sat quietly beside the window, watching the moonlight move across the floor. For years she had dreamed of attending the ceremony, not because she wanted power or a special title, but because she wanted one simple thing: the chance to choose her own future. Instead, the same family that claimed to protect her had decided she was better hidden away. Evelyn lowered her gaze and held on to the small hope that had carried her through every difficult moment. She reminded herself that being unseen did not mean being without value. Meanwhile, at Northern Moon Castle, Adrian Blackwood stood among the gathered Lycan families, but his attention was no longer on the ceremony before him. Something felt wrong. The connection he had expected to sense was missing. Every year, the mating ceremony brought together those whose paths were meant to cross. Yet tonight there was a strange emptiness that even the strongest Lycan in the kingdom could not ignore. His advisors noticed the change in his expression. "Your Majesty, is something wrong?" one of them asked. Adrian looked toward the crowd. "Someone who should be here is not here." The words surprised those around him. They believed the ceremony was proceeding perfectly. Every important family had arrived. Every powerful name was represented. But Adrian had learned long ago that appearances often hid the truth. While others focused on reputation and status, he focused on what was missing. Back at the Carter estate, Victoria watched the ceremony from a distance through the reports delivered to her. She felt confident that her plan had worked. Her own daughter would have a chance to gain recognition, and Evelyn would remain a forgotten Omega who no one would search for. Victoria had spent years convincing herself that Evelyn was too gentle, too ordinary, and too insignificant to matter. She never considered that those same qualities were what made Evelyn different. She never saw that compassion could be a form of strength. As the night continued, Adrian made a decision. He could not ignore the feeling that something important had been hidden from him. He left the ceremony grounds and began searching for answers. His advisors questioned his choice, but the Lycan King remained certain. A true bond does not disappear without a reason, he said. His search led him through the records of the noble families participating in the ceremony. That was when he noticed something unusual. The Carter family had listed every eligible member except one, Evelyn Carter. Her name existed in old records, but there was no explanation for her absence. Adrian studied the information carefully. An Omega missing from the most important ceremony of the year was not an accident. Someone had made that choice for her. At the same moment, Evelyn stood inside the hidden room and heard footsteps approaching from outside. Her heart became uncertain. She did not know if the person arriving would bring more disappointment or finally reveal the truth. The door remained closed, but for the first time that night, Evelyn felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Across the kingdom, the Lycan King had discovered that the person missing from Destiny was not lost. She had been hidden. And Adrian Blackwood was determined to find out why. The first light of morning reached the Carter estate, but Evelyn remained in the quiet room where she had spent the entire night. The celebration outside had ended hours ago, yet the silence inside felt heavier than before. She did not know what had happened at the ceremony. She did not know that the Lycan King had noticed her absence. All she knew was that another important moment in her life had passed without her being seen. Evelyn placed her hand against the cold window and looked toward the distant horizon. She wondered if anyone had searched for her. She wondered if anyone had noticed that she was missing. But after years of being treated as someone unimportant, she had learned not to expect answers. Still, a small part of her heart hoped that someone somewhere had recognized the truth. Meanwhile, Adrian Blackwood continued investigating the mystery surrounding the missing Omega from the Carter family. The more information he gathered, the more questions appeared. The official records showed that Evelyn had been born into the family with a respected lineage. She had received proper education, understood royal traditions, and possessed the same family heritage as those who attended the ceremony. Yet somehow, her name had disappeared from every recent document. Adrian stood in his private study, reviewing the information again. Someone wanted the kingdom to believe she did not exist, he said quietly. His advisors remained silent because they understood the seriousness behind his words. The mating ceremony was not only a tradition, it was a sacred event where every eligible member had the right to be present. Removing someone from it was not a simple mistake. It was a deliberate choice. Adrian looked at the old records containing Evelyn's name. There was something unusual about her history. Unlike many Omegas who were described only by their family status, Evelyn's records included notes about her compassion and her ability to support others. Villagers had written about her kindness. Healers had mentioned her rare understanding of medicinal herbs. Even as a young woman, she had been known for helping people who needed care. Yet none of those details appeared in the reports prepared for the ceremony. Only her status as an Omega remained. Adrian realized someone had carefully removed every detail that showed her true character. At the Carter estate, Victoria noticed that something was changing. The silence she expected after the ceremony never arrived. Rumors had begun spreading that the Lycan King was asking questions about Evelyn. For the first time, Victoria felt uncertain. She had believed hiding Evelyn would make her disappear from everyone's attention. She never imagined that her absence would become the very thing that drew the king's focus. Back inside the hidden room, Evelyn heard the sound of footsteps approaching again. This time there was no fear in her heart, only curiosity. The door opened slowly, revealing one of the castle messengers standing outside. "Evelyn Carter?" the messenger asked. She nodded carefully. "The Lycan King wishes to speak with you." For a moment, Evelyn could not respond. The person she had never expected to notice her had asked to see her. She did not know why Adrian Blackwood wanted to meet her. She did not know what the future held. But as she stepped beyond the room where she had been hidden, Evelyn felt something she had not felt in a long time. The feeling that maybe her story was not ending. Maybe it was finally beginning. The journey to Northern Moon Castle felt unreal to Evelyn Carter. Only a few hours earlier, she had been sitting alone behind a locked door, believing that the world had moved on without her. Now she was traveling toward the palace of the Lycan King, the one person who had noticed the absence everyone else ignored. As the carriage moved through the kingdom, Evelyn looked through the window at the villages and forests beyond. She wondered why someone as powerful as Adrian Blackwood would want to meet her. She was not a noble leader. She was not someone with influence. She was only an Omega who had spent years being told that she was not important. Yet something inside her whispered that perhaps her life was about to change. When Evelyn arrived at the castle, she expected to feel overwhelmed by its size and grandeur. The halls were filled with history, decorated with symbols of a kingdom built through generations of tradition. But what surprised her most was not the castle itself. It was the way people treated her. The guards greeted her respectfully. The servants looked at her with curiosity, not judgment. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt like people were seeing her as a person rather than a problem. Adrian stood waiting in the royal chamber when she arrived. The Lycan King had faced countless challenges during his reign, but this meeting felt different. He had searched for the missing person from the ceremony, expecting to find someone hidden by circumstances. Instead, he found someone who had been hidden by the choices of others. Evelyn entered the room quietly and lowered her head in respect. "Your Majesty," she said. Adrian studied her for a moment. He noticed something immediately. She was nervous, but she was not afraid of him. Many people entered his presence seeking approval or trying to gain favor. Evelyn simply stood there, carrying herself with quiet dignity. "Do you know why I asked to see you?" Adrian asked. Evelyn looked down briefly before answering. "I assume it is because I was absent from the ceremony." Her honesty surprised him. "You know what happened?" he asked. Evelyn gave a small, thoughtful smile. "I know that I was not allowed to attend." There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness, only a quiet acceptance of something she had lived with for years. Adrian looked at her carefully. "And does that not upset you?" Evelyn paused. She could have spoken about betrayal. She could have described every moment she felt unwanted. Instead, she answered differently. "It hurts to be forgotten by people who should have cared. But I do not want their choices to decide who I become." Those words stayed in Adrian's mind. He had expected to find someone broken by the situation. Instead, he found someone who had endured disappointment without losing her compassion. "Why did you continue helping others when they ignored you?" he asked. Evelyn looked toward the castle windows, where the moonlight touched the gardens outside. "Because kindness should not depend on whether someone notices it." For the first time in many years, Adrian felt that he was standing before someone truly rare. Not someone who wanted power. Not someone who wanted a royal title. Someone who carried strength without needing to prove it. The Lycan King had searched for the person missing from destiny. But now that he had found her, he began to wonder if the greatest discovery was not the bond itself. It was the person behind it. The days following Evelyn Carter's arrival at Northern Moon Castle revealed a truth that surprised everyone who met her. The Omega, who was expected to be quiet and insignificant, had brought a sense of warmth into a place that had always been filled with duty and responsibility. Evelyn did not try to impress anyone. She did not ask for special treatment. She simply continued being the person she had always been, even when no one had been watching. Every morning, she walked through the castle gardens, helping the workers care for the flowers and plants. She listened when the servants spoke about their families. She remembered small details that others often ignored. To Evelyn, kindness was never a performance. It was simply the way she lived. Adrian Blackwood noticed everything. As the Lycan King, he had spent years surrounded by people who carefully chose their words around him. Many wanted his approval. Many wanted the influence that came from standing near the throne. But Evelyn was different. She had no interest in power. She did not even seem to realize how much attention she had gained. One afternoon, Adrian found her in the old library, reading records about the history of Northern Moon Kingdom. Most people who arrive here spend their first days asking what they can gain, he said. Evelyn looked up with a small smile. I think I have spent enough time knowing what it feels like to lose things. I do not want to become someone who only takes. Her answer stayed with him. Later that evening, Adrian reviewed the information collected about the Carter family. The more he learned, the clearer the truth became. Evelyn had not been hidden because she lacked importance. She had been hidden because someone feared what would happen if people saw her clearly. The old records revealed that Evelyn belonged to a respected bloodline. Her family had once recognized her unique abilities and gentle nature. She had been known for helping others and bringing peace during difficult moments. But after Victoria Carter gained control of the household, those stories slowly disappeared. Adrian closed the documents with a quiet expression. They did not remove her because she had no value, he said. They removed her because they knew she had value. His advisors remained silent. They understood the meaning behind his words. Someone had tried to control destiny by controlling who was allowed to be seen. Meanwhile, Evelyn struggled with the attention surrounding her. She still found it difficult to believe that people were interested in her because of who she was, not because of what she represented. One evening, Adrian found her standing near the castle balcony, looking over the kingdom below. Are you comfortable here? He asked. Evelyn thought carefully before answering. I am grateful. But sometimes I still feel like I am waiting for someone to tell me I do not belong. Adrian looked at her with understanding. He knew those feelings were not created in one day, and they would not disappear in one day either. You do not have to earn your place here, he said. You already have one. Evelyn looked at him, almost unable to believe the words. For so long she had searched for proof that she mattered. Now, the Lycan King was reminding her of something she had forgotten. Her worth had never depended on anyone's permission. And as Adrian watched her begin to believe that truth, he realized the mystery surrounding the missing Omega was becoming something far greater than he expected. It was not only about a hidden bond. It was about discovering a person the world had failed to see. The truth about Evelyn Carter's past could no longer remain hidden. After years of being overlooked, the Omega who was removed from the mating ceremony had finally been seen by the one person who had the power to uncover every secret. Adrian Blackwood, the Lycan King, had spent his reign searching for honesty among those who surrounded him. Now he found himself facing a truth that changed everything. Evelyn had not disappeared because she was unworthy. She had disappeared because someone wanted the kingdom to believe she was. As Adrian continued reviewing the Carter family records, more details came to light. Evelyn's name had been carefully removed from important documents. Her achievements had been ignored. Her kindness had been treated as something insignificant. But the old records told a different story. They described a young Omega who had helped villagers during difficult times, who had studied healing traditions, and who had always placed the needs of others before her own. Adrian realized that the person everyone dismissed was the same person who had spent years quietly making a difference. Meanwhile, Victoria Carter received news that the Lycan King was investigating Evelyn's absence. The confidence she once carried began to disappear. She had believed that hiding Evelyn would erase her from the kingdom's attention. She never expected the opposite to happen. The more she tried to remove Evelyn from the story, the more important the missing pieces became. Victoria decided to travel to Northern Moon Castle, hoping to explain the situation before the truth reached too many people. When she arrived, she expected the Lycan King to see the matter as a family disagreement. Instead, Adrian welcomed her with a calm expression that revealed he already knew more than she expected. Why was Evelyn Carter absent from the ceremony? He asked. Victoria attempted to explain that Evelyn was not prepared for such an important event, and that the family had made the decision for practical reasons. But Adrian noticed something immediately. Every explanation focused on what Evelyn lacked. None of them mentioned who she was. A person's value is not determined by whether others choose to recognize it, Adrian said. Victoria became silent because she understood that her usual influence would not work here. Evelyn stood nearby, listening to the conversation. For years, she had believed she needed to defend herself to be heard. But now she realized something important. She did not need to prove that she deserved respect. She only needed to stop accepting the idea that she did not. Adrian turned toward Evelyn. You should have been standing among them from the beginning. Those words reached deeper than he knew. Evelyn had spent so much time believing she was the person left behind. Now, the Lycan King was showing her that she had never been forgotten by destiny. She had only been hidden from the people who failed to understand her. As the kingdom began learning the truth, whispers changed into conversations of respect. The Omega who was missing from the ceremony was no longer a mystery. She was becoming someone the entire kingdom wanted to know. And Adrian Blackwood knew that protecting Evelyn was not about correcting a mistake. It was about honoring the person who had always been worthy of being seen. The days after the truth was revealed brought a change throughout Northern Moon Kingdom. The story that once surrounded Evelyn Carter was no longer one of absence or weakness. People began speaking about the Omega who had been hidden away, not with pity but with respect. For the first time in her life, Evelyn walked through the kingdom without feeling like she needed to disappear. Yet even with the kindness she received, she remained the same person she had always been. She did not seek attention. She did not demand recognition. She simply continued helping others in the quiet way that had always defined her. Adrian Blackwood noticed this more than anyone. As the Lycan King, he had witnessed many people change when they gained influence. Some became distant. Some became focused only on their new position. But Evelyn remained unchanged. The same woman who had been forgotten by her own family was now being welcomed by the entire kingdom. And she still cared more about others than herself. One morning, Adrian invited Evelyn to visit the villages near the northern forests. He wanted her to see the people whose lives she had touched without ever knowing it. As they traveled through the countryside, Evelyn looked surprised by the warm greetings they received. Villagers approached with smiles, thanking her for kindness she had shown long before she ever entered the royal castle. I do not understand, Evelyn said softly. I barely remember these moments. Adrian looked at her with a gentle expression. That is because you never helped people to be remembered. You helped because it was who you were. His words made her quiet. She had spent years believing that the things she did were too small to matter. She had never realized that small acts of compassion could leave lasting impressions. At one village, an elderly healer approached Evelyn and shared stories about her younger years. She spoke about how Evelyn had spent time learning traditional remedies and helping families who needed support. She spoke about a young Omega who never asked whether someone deserved kindness before offering it. Evelyn listened with emotion because she was hearing her own story from someone else's perspective. For so long, she had only remembered the moments when people ignored her. She had forgotten the moments when people appreciated her. Later that evening, Adrian and Evelyn walked through the castle gardens beneath the moonlight. The quiet between them felt comfortable, unlike the silence Evelyn had known before. You are still surprised when people respect you, Adrian said. Evelyn smiled slightly. I think I am still learning that respect does not have to be earned through perfection. Adrian looked at her thoughtfully. You were never respected because of what you could become. You were respected because of who you already were. Those words stayed with her. Evelyn realized that her journey was not about proving her family wrong, or showing the kingdom what they missed. It was about finally accepting the truth she had forgotten. She had always been worthy. As the moon shone over Northern Moon Kingdom, Adrian understood that the connection between them was growing stronger. It was not only because of the mysterious bond that brought them together. It was because he admired the person Evelyn was when no one was watching. And Evelyn, the Omega who had once been hidden from the world, was beginning to understand that she was never meant to remain unseen. The connection between Evelyn Carter and Adrian Blackwood continued to grow, but neither of them rushed to define what it meant. Their bond was not built on a single moment or a simple promise. It was created through countless small moments of trust, understanding, and respect. For Evelyn, this was something she had never experienced before. She had spent so much of her life believing that people only saw her as an Omega with limitations. Now she was surrounded by people who valued her thoughts, listened to her ideas, and respected her presence. Yet the person who understood her most was the Lycan King himself. Adrian had always carried the responsibility of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. Many people admired his strength, But few ever asked how much weight he carried behind his calm expression. Evelyn noticed what others overlooked. She noticed the quiet moments when he needed someone to listen. She noticed the exhaustion hidden beneath his royal duties. One evening, she found him standing alone in the castle library, reviewing reports from different territories. "You spend every day protecting everyone else," Evelyn said softly. "But who reminds you that you are allowed to rest?" Adrian looked up, surprised by the question. Most people approached him with requests or expectations. Few ever considered what he needed. "You always think about others first," he said. Evelyn smiled gently. "Perhaps because I know what it feels like when no one does." Her answer stayed with him. Adrian realized that Evelyn's kindness was not simply a habit. It came from understanding pain and choosing not to pass that pain to someone else. As the days passed, the kingdom began preparing for an official gathering where Adrian would introduce important changes regarding the future of Northern Moon. Many expected the event to focus only on royal decisions and political matters. But Adrian knew there was another truth that needed to be recognized. Evelyn had spent too long standing in the shadows. It was time for the kingdom to see her clearly. Before the gathering, Evelyn felt uncertain. She had never wanted attention. She had never dreamed of standing before powerful families. "What if they only see my past?" she asked Adrian. He looked at her with complete confidence. "Then they will learn that your past is exactly what proves your strength." Those words gave her courage. At the gathering, Evelyn entered the hall beside Adrian. The same place where powerful families once celebrated. While she was hidden away was now the place where her story would finally be understood. The room became quiet as people looked at the Omega who had changed the way they viewed strength. Adrian spoke before everyone. "For too long, people have believed power is measured by position, influence, or status. But true strength is shown through character." He looked toward Evelyn. "The person standing beside me has shown more courage through kindness than many have shown through authority." Evelyn felt emotion rise in her heart. Not because she needed the approval of the crowd, but because she finally understood that she was no longer the girl waiting behind a locked door. She was someone who had found her own voice. Later that night, beneath the moonlight, Adrian and Evelyn walked through the castle gardens. "Do you believe destiny brought us together?" Adrian asked. Evelyn looked at the stars above them. "Maybe destiny introduced us. But I think our choices are what made us stay." Adrian smiled because he knew she was right. The bond between them was not only something written in the stars. It was something they chose every day. And as the moon shone over the kingdom, the Lycan King realized that the greatest discovery of his life was not finding a destined partner. It was finding someone who made him want to become better. The day Northern Moon Kingdom had been waiting for finally arrived. The grand hall that once represented everything Evelyn Carter was denied now became the place where her true story was honored. The banners of the kingdom hung beneath the high ceilings, and people from every territory gathered to witness a new chapter in the history of the Lycan realm. Evelyn stood beside Adrian Blackwood, but this time she was not standing there as the Omega who had been hidden away. She stood there as herself. She remembered the small room where she had spent the night of the mating ceremony. She remembered listening to voices beyond the locked door, while believing that her future had already been decided by others. But standing in the royal hall now, she understood something she could not see back then. The door that kept her hidden had not ended her destiny. It had only delayed the moment when the world would finally recognize her. Adrian looked across the gathered crowd before speaking. His voice carried through the hall with calm certainty. A kingdom is not made stronger by ignoring those who have less power. It becomes stronger when every person is given the chance to be seen. The people listened carefully because they knew his words were not simply a royal statement. They were a reflection of what had happened to Evelyn. She had been removed from a ceremony meant to celebrate destiny, yet she had become someone who changed how the kingdom understood worth. Adrian continued. Evelyn Carter was never missing because she lacked importance. She was missing because others failed to understand her value. Evelyn felt emotion rise within her as she heard those words. For years, she had wondered why being kind was never enough for the people around her. Now she understood that kindness was never meant to convince those who refused to see. It was meant to guide the people who were willing to understand. After the gathering, Evelyn walked through the gardens where her journey in Northern Moon Kingdom had truly begun. The same flower she once cared for quietly had grown beautifully beneath the northern sky. Adrian joined her, and for a moment, they enjoyed the peaceful silence. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had attended the ceremony that night?" he asked. Evelyn smiled softly. "Sometimes. But I think I would have only seen the moment. I would not have understood the journey." Adrian looked at her thoughtfully. "And what did the journey teach you?" Evelyn looked toward the castle walls that once represented a world she never thought she could enter. That being unseen does not mean being unimportant. And being rejected does not mean being unworthy. Her answer reminded Adrian why he had been drawn to her from the beginning. Evelyn had never needed a crown to prove her value. She had carried her strength long before anyone recognized it. In the months that followed, the kingdom changed in ways no one expected. More opportunities were created for those who had been overlooked. Old traditions were reconsidered. People began understanding that leadership was not only about strength, but also about compassion. Evelyn became known throughout the kingdom, not because she stood beside the Lycan King, but because she inspired others to believe in their own worth. And Adrian knew that choosing Evelyn was not simply a matter of destiny. It was a choice based on respect, admiration, and love. The girl they once tried to hide became the woman who brought hope to an entire kingdom. The Omega who was forgotten became the Luna who reminded everyone that true strength was never about being the loudest or the most powerful. True strength was gentle. True strength was kind. And sometimes, the greatest light in the kingdom came from the person everyone tried hardest not to see.